So, how does one of the most powerful empires in all of human history just vanish? And at the same time, how does a small, persecuted religion rise up to shape the world for the next 1,000 years? It's this incredible story of two intersecting fates, and today we're going to dive right in.
I mean, for centuries, Rome really was the world. During an era of unprecedented peace, this period we call the Pax Romana, its influence was, well, absolute. You had Roman legions patrolling all the way from Britain to the Middle East. Roman culture was the gold standard. This thing looked like it was built to last forever, right?
And that's the big question, isn't it? How did this mighty empire end up in ruins, while its story got so wrapped up with this new religion? A religion that it would eventually adopt, just before its entire western half collapsed.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we've got to go way back to the beginning. Back to a small, dusty province in the empire, where a completely radical new idea was starting to take root.
So picture this. The Roman province of Judea is just simmering with anticipation. You see, within Judaism, there was this powerful, long-held prophecy of a Messiah, a savior who would arrive and restore their kingdom. And it's right into this pressure cooker of expectation that Jesus of Nazareth is born.
And his message? Wow, it was completely revolutionary. See, on one hand, you had the official Roman state religion, which was all about these complex rituals to the gods that were really designed to reinforce the emperor's power. But then you have Jesus, preaching a direct, personal relationship with God. He spoke about compassion, he performed good works, and he started gathering this huge following, especially among ordinary folks who felt kind of left out of the whole official system.
You can imagine, this kind of popularity, it was seen as a major threat. His message directly challenged the authority of both the local Jewish leaders and, of course, the Roman state itself. And, well, we know how this part of the story goes. He was ultimately arrested by the Roman governor Pontius Pilate and crucified, a brutal Roman punishment that was saved for rebels.
But here's the thing. That wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. It was really just a beginning. So how did this tiny movement, whose leader had just been publicly executed, go from the absolute fringes of the empire to its very center?
And the crazy thing is, the Roman Empire itself kind of gave this new faith all the tools it needed to spread. I mean, think about it. Missionaries like the Apostle Paul could travel on the empire's amazing network of safe roads. They could speak to people in common languages like Greek and Latin. And that message of hope, boy, did it resonate. It hit home with the poor and the powerless because it offered something the empire never could, a promise of a better afterlife, and a real sense of personal dignity and community in a very harsh world.
Now, for centuries, being a Christian was dangerous. They were persecuted. But then, everything changed. I mean, a truly seismic shift. In the early 300s, the Roman Emperor Constantine himself converts to Christianity. This was the turning point.
And in what has to be one of the most stunning reversals of fortune in history, just a few decades later, the religion that Rome had once tried to stamp out becomes the official state religion of the entire empire. Talk about a glow-up, from a persecuted sect to the #1 religion, all in less than 400 years. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. The great irony is that just as Christianity is cementing its power, the very empire that adopted it was beginning to crack. This giant of an empire was starting to seriously stumble, suffering from problems that had been building up for 100 years.
You know, it wasn't just about size. The empire was kind of rotting from the inside out. You had decades of civil war, a collapsing economy thanks to inflation and crazy taxes, and just constant pressure on the borders. It was becoming ungovernable. So Emperor Diocletian's decision to literally split it in half, an Eastern and a Western empire, this wasn't some power move. It was a desperate move, you know? A last-ditch effort to just stop the bleeding.
And then Constantine makes another absolutely massive decision. He moves the capital away from the city of Rome, the historic heart of it all, and founds a new Rome in the east. He calls it Constantinople. And look, this wasn't just for show. It was a strategic retreat, plain and simple. The power, the money, the focus, it all shifted to the much more stable and defensible east, leaving the old western half looking more and more isolated and vulnerable.
So let's just step back and look at this timeline for a second, because it all happens so fast. Around 33 CE, Jesus is crucified. Fast forward a couple centuries to 284, the empire splits. Just a few decades after that, the capital moves. You see how it all lines up? The rise of this new faith and the fracturing of the empire? They're happening side by side, setting the stage for the final act. Rome getting sacked in 410, and the West finally falling for good in 476. So all of these internal problems, they basically left the Western Empire wide open. And wouldn't you know it, there were new players gathering right at the gates, ready to deliver the final blows. This map right here, it just does an amazing job of showing the sheer chaos. I mean, for centuries, Rome had dealt with pressure on its borders, but in the 4th and 5th centuries, that pressure just turned into this overwhelming flood of migrations and invasions from all sorts of Germanic groups. It was basically a massive domino effect. So first, you've got these fierce nomadic warriors, the Huns, sweeping in from Central Asia. They pushed Germanic tribes like the Goths and the Vandals out of their homelands. So where do these tribes go? They flee for safety right into Roman territory. The Roman army in the west, already stretched thin, just couldn't handle the sheer numbers. And in 410 CE, for the first time in 800 years, the unthinkable happens. The city of Rome itself is captured and plundered. And the end? The official end came in 476 CE. The very last Roman emperor in the West, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was just kicked off the throne by a Germanic chieftain. You know, there was no final epic battle, no glorious last stand. The Western Roman Empire just fizzled out.
So the government, gone. The Western Empire was no more. But did Rome really fall? Or did it just change into something else? What was left behind in all that rubble?
I mean, just think about it. So much of our world is built on these Roman foundations. The Latin language, it didn't die. It evolved into French, Spanish, Italian. Roman ideas about law are still the bedrock for many legal systems today. Their incredible engineering marvels are still standing. And, of course, the Christian Church, now with its headquarters in Rome, became the most powerful and influential institution in Europe for the next 1,000 years. Easy.
And this incredible mix of Greek and Roman ideas, what we now call Greco-Roman culture, it really provided the blueprint for everything that came after in Western civilization, from art and philosophy to government. Rome didn't just disappear. Its ideas were soaked up and carried forward into the future. Which kind of leaves us with this one big thought to chew on. The political machine of the Western Roman Empire completely vanished. But its legacy, its culture, its laws, and most of all, the faith it adopted right before it collapsed, that lived on to define an entire civilization. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What actually endures when a great empire falls?